Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to our special assembly for VE Day. I hope that you've been onto our virtual school and been practicing the songs along with Mr. Farr, because you're going to need to sing them later in the assembly. VE Day stands for Victory in Europe, and Friday the 8th of May marks 75 years since the end of World War II. 6 years of dreadful fighting and suffering came to the end, and millions of people took to the streets to celebrate victory in Europe. They thought about their loved ones that they lost and they mourned for them. They celebrated the peace and the exciting time, and they thought about their hopes for the future. During this assembly, you will hear first-hand accounts from people who were there. They're actually relatives of people in the school. There's Mr. Farr's dad, and there's my Auntie Laura, both of which have been good friends to the school over the years. And they're going to tell you what they remember about that time and how it affected them.
In the 1930s, Germany, under Adolf Hitler, built up their military, and it was obvious they wanted to control all of Europe, all of the world. From 1938, Germany started to take over other countries that surrounded it, like Austria and Czechoslovakia. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland. That was the final straw and prompted Britain to declare war.
Let's find out what life was like when war broke out.
I was 13 then, and it was very exciting. We had gas masks issued and things like that. And one of the first things everybody had to do was to put blackout curtains at the windows. The theory was that if the aircraft came over, if everything was black, they didn't know where to drop the bombs. So first thing, everybody blackout curtains all the time. Also, as a precaution, if the bombs dropped, the windows would all smash. So the next thing is, everybody had to stick brown paper across the windows so that if the windows got burst, the glass didn't scatter everywhere, it just fell out. That was the theory anyway.
Well, of course, every day there we were with our gas masks in those wooden cardboard boxes, and we had to remember them every time on the train. We travelled on the train, by the way, and because you couldn't have a train lit up, you couldn't have the stations lit up, the train was just blue lights. And it was amazing if you got off at the right station.
And schools were different?
At the start of the war, I was 11, and I'd heard that I'd passed the 11 plus exam to go to the high school, where my sister was already there. And so I was delighted, of course, to be going, but because there was a fuel shortage, everything was short during the war and afterwards, of course, and because there was a shortage, we could only go to school for 1.5 days a week, and different classes went at different days. So that's how I spent the wartime.
It was quite interesting actually, because we had to go to school, but in actual fact we went to school from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon in somebody's front room, and that's how we had our education for about the next 3 months.
After successfully taking over Poland, the German army moved into France. The British army, fighting in France, was easily pushed back to the coast of Dunkirk. They would have been wiped out if it had not been for the fact that everyone who had a boat was asked to sail over to France and rescue the troops. It was a great success.
So what was the effect at home when they heard about Dunkirk?
Feeling in the war, first of all, we were desperate when the army was surrounded and couldn't get away. But of course, everybody thought it was absolutely wonderful that thousands and thousands of small boats went out to rescue them and brought them all back safely to continue the fight.
The German Navy and Air Force cut off the supplies to Britain to try to starve us into submission, so rationing was introduced by the government.
It was difficult for families to get any food. So what did you eat?
Trying to get food, and all the food we wanted, because everything was severely rationed. Invariably, if you had a garden or were in a house there, and you got a little bit of space at the back, you would invariably have 2 or 3 chickens, merely because the chickens would provide you with eggs.
So when the war started in 1939, United Kingdom imported about 60% of all of its food. The Germans cut off the supply lines to the country, so in order for everybody to get exactly what they needed and to be fair to everybody, the government introduced rationing. So with food being a bit more scarce, people were allowed to have 8 ounces of sugar every week, 25 tea bags, 8 ounces of ham or bacon, 4 ounces of cheese and some baking butter, some lard and some margarine, and just 1 egg, and about 2 to 3
Was that 1 egg for a whole family?
1 egg for a whole family. So because these kind of foods were quite scarce, people had to modify recipes. So here we've got an eggless fruit cake. So because we only had 1 egg, people had to try and devise cakes that would rise without the egg. One of the only things that wasn't rationed on were vegetables. So everybody was encouraged to grow their own vegetables in the garden. Things like onions, potatoes, leeks, all grow really well in this country. And then they made recipes like hominy pie, which was very popular, with potatoes, leek, a little bit of cream in there as well. So during the war, a very popular drink was lemonade, made with lemons, hot water and some of the rationed sugar. You peel the lemons, add your lemon juice, add your boiling water and sugar, let that cool, and then you've got homemade lemonade. And they also made ginger beer as well. Rationing, the food was actually a lot more healthier, and the country was a lot more healthier as well. A lot less sugar and saturated fats. Might sound a bit boring, but in fact they're absolutely delicious. So for a lunch perhaps you'd have the hominy pie, which is the leeks, potato in a pastry case. And then for your pudding you could have your sugar, eggless fruit cake.
That is really nice.
So with rationing there was a shortage of meat, and very often people would go into the fields to hunt rabbits and very often end up in a rabbit pie.
Run, rabbit, run.
Run, rabbits, run, rabbits, run, run, run. Run, rabbits, run, rabbits, run, run, run. Bang, 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 bang goes the farmer's gun. So run, rabbits, run, rabbits, run, 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 run. Rabbits, run, rabbits, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun, fun, fun. He'll get by without his rabbit pie. So run, rabbits, run, rabbits, run, run, run.
Hitler saw how resourceful we were, so he sent over his bombers to bomb the factories and the cities. This was the start of the Battle of Britain. And we may well have been defeated there and then if it had not been for the development of the Spitfire, which was built here in Castle Bromwich.
Battle of Britain was when the Spitfires were organised. We hadn't got that many Spitfires, but they were so well organised that they intercepted the bombers coming over. And usually the figures that you would find, they shoot down at least 3 times more than they suffered themselves.
Obviously frightening times. How did you all keep your spirits up?
a television or anything like that. We were going to be relayed on the radio. And of course, our fun was either singing with the radio or getting round together with pianos and instruments that we'd walk down the road with. For example, you can have a ukulele or you can have a harmonica. And we would play tunes such as...
The whole world was to war. We had rebuilt our army with the other Allied forces, including USA, France and the countries of the Commonwealth. They planned to invade Europe and to drive the Germans back. On the 6th of June 1944, the Allies invaded France. This was known as D-Day.
And in 1944, my brother Norman was one of the very first people to go into France to help fight the Germans. They went in before the landings before the landings at sea, and they took some places called Pegasus Bridge. And the Pegasus Bridge operation was merely to control two bridges so that the Germans could not advance beyond the two bridges. They captured the two bridges. They captured those before the actual D-Day finished. Because they got the entire elements of surprise was required to capture those bridges, they came in with gliders. They were towed across from England to France, released 12 miles from France, and then they landed. In actual fact, they landed exactly on the bridges that they were supposed to capture, and within 2 hours they'd actually captured them.
On the 7th of May 1945, the Germans surrendered, and our Prime Minister Winston Churchill announced it to the country on the 8th of May and declared VE Day.
What do you remember about Victory in Europe Day 75 years ago today?
Absolutely great. Everybody was having the time of their lives. Street parties, bands going, singing, dancing in the streets, doing everything there. Absolutely great. Apart from me, I was on guard duty in Warrington.
We heard on the news that the armistice had been signed, and so we were all full of joy and happiness, and we were very glad that my dad was in the on the railway, so we could. My sister and I were put in charge of the guard, and we travelled down to Taunton to join my auntie. And we went from there in her little car, 4 of us, one sitting on my lap through the roof of the car, and there was a submarine who was moored in the bay, and we were invited. They said, come and see our submarine, and so there we were, all we people going aboard this submarine, just because it was the end of the war and we could go on board again.
We sung a couple of really popular songs from World War II today already, but now we're going to sing a really special song called We'll Meet Again by Vera Lynn. And this song will be sung at 3 o'clock this afternoon because the words are as relevant today as they were 75 years ago.
know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do. Again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do.
And so, for VE Day, let's see. I'd like you to do something special for me. After this assembly, on Friday, the 8th of May, have a think about how you can commemorate this day. Hold a 1940s dance, but in your own front room. Or visit more family using FaceTime or Zoom. Dress in wartime clothing, if you're in the mood. Or eat spam sandwiches, or other such food. Playing old-fashioned games really isn't that hard. You might have some marbles, some dice or some cards. And if you really would be up for some fun, sing old wartime songs like Run Rabbit Run. You could play piano, ukulele or even guitar. Teach your family to sing, just like Mr. Farr. And if you want to learn more, you could research for a while and create your own wonderful VE Day fact file. You can make some flag bunting to put up on the wall or draw VE Day pictures. It's really your call. But we all really want to see what you do. So please send us your photos and videos too. Tweet at Hillstone PS, then your teacher can see. And in reward, we will send you a badge straight from Marvellous Me.
So we hope that you're going to commemorate this day. And to show us what you've done, why don't you get in touch with us through our Twitter account? Or if you haven't got one, set one up yourself. So send off to @Hillstone PS. We really look forward to seeing what you do.